Make it number one. There are so many small issues that plague the National Football League, most of which are surrounded by players' personal actions and gain the most media coverage and organization involvement. The league should be concentrating their efforts on things that impact the sport and its players. Concussions in professional football are major concerns for current players, their families, and football prospects. I feel that the NFL should make player safety regarding concussions their number one priority. A concussion is a complex pathophysiological process that has an effect on the brain. It is normally caused by a trauma or injury to the brain due to a blow to the head or an indirect blow to the body. The sport of football, at any level, is very physical. Athletes put their bodies through vigorous training and physical abuse for the years they play the sport. Game after game, these individuals are taking and giving punishment to their bodies and others, all in the same time. These hits are causing injuries to the brain that some have no idea they have even sustained. Each impact to the head or to other parts of the body that inadvertently affect the brain cause these concussions. In the past, mental health and players' post-injury conditions were not on the NFL's watch list. They spent most of their time and efforts dealing with issues that could possibly cause player fines and bring in unexpected revenue. An issue like player injuries that cause concussions would most likely bring them under too much scrutiny. The league may be forced to answer questions like, is professional football too physical? Or are players being provided with the best available equipment to promote safety from high-impact head injuries? Let's look at some of the most recent numbers on concussions in the National Football League. In 2012, there was a reported 261 concussions among football players. These numbers dropped over the next couple of years, but not by any significance. By 2014, only 206 concussions were reported, which may seem like something was having a positive impact, but there wasn't. In fact, it was found by many individuals close to the sport that players were more unwilling to report injuries for fear of losing playing time. Some of the more higher-profile players were allowed to return to games after injuries, without the proper protocol, because if the team the desire to win. This type of behavior may have caused concussions to rise back to 271 in 2015, a 32% increase. The NFL can no longer keep closed eyes and ears to this issue. A big concern among football analysts is that the league officials are always slow to act on major issues like concussions. The senior vice president of health and safety policy advised the public that they will study what might have caused these incidences of head injuries to rise so much. The NFL does more investigating and studies than actually fixing the problems within the organization. This was brought to light recently in a movie called Concussion. The movie was based on the findings of Dr. Bennett Omolo, which concluded that players were suffering major damage to the brain from impacts during football activities. Dr. Omolo found that these traumatic injuries were causing devastating issues later in the lives of former football players. Even after all his research and findings, the NFL was reluctant to admit there was any correlation between concussions and the long effects of brain injuries. It took nearly 10 years before they would even acknowledge that the two were related, but they were still unwilling to make it a top priority in finding a solution. Years later, the NFL put into effect some safety-related rules in an attempt to lower the number of football-related concussions. There weren't, however, any ways to enforce the safety measures behind game officiating, which was inconsistent. Hitting a defenseless player helmet-to-helmet hits and gang tackling were some of the changed rules and most likely recognized calls on the field that were enforced. These are all good, but more drastic measures need to be taken if the National Football League wants to protect its brand and keep the future of the NFL thriving. I fear that if concussions, injuries continue to plague the league, a lot of young potential players will be choosing other safer sports. So what should the NFL do to promote player safety in regards to concussions? They need to make player concussions its number one priority and pledge all of its available resources to finding and implementing ways to eliminate concussions. Not just band-aid solutions, there have new helmet invitations that have proved to be much better at shock absorption than the current ones in use. The league needs to force teams to use the best equipment available, not make it a player or team choice. Cost should never be an issue when considering what is really at stake. The league must strengthen the programs that they have set up by having more safety training courses on concussions. The organization surrounding the league needs to be required by the league to not only participate but enforce the rules and safety guidelines. Enforcing a no return policy to any player injured in a game until they have properly examined and released by the team doctors and league specialists. The league should make themselves responsible for player health and safety while they are active players and after they have retired or left the sport. After players have invested their lives into the sport, they should never feel like they are without avenues of assistance. In conclusion, it is safe to say that the NFL has come under fire since concussions have had such a negative impact on the lives of their former and current players. Lawsuits have caused notable attention nationwide, but what is important is that players have lost their lives, their families, and their physical ability to continue playing the sport they love because of negligence on behalf of the league. Some players have been pushed to early retirement by fear of traumatic brain injury. There is only one way the National Football League can protect its brand, the players, and the future of the sport, and that is by making their player safety and reference to concussions its number one priority.